most challenging part of writing your book is, well, getting started. So today we're going to discuss how you can write that first chapter.
Do not attempt to adjust your dial. I'm transmitting live with the hardcore style. Fresh new kicks.
I want someone to look at me as lovingly as I look at this bottle of Apothic White. I love Apothic wines. They have, the brand Apothic has Apothic White, obviously, duh. They have Apothic Dark, and they have Apothic Red. I love them all. They are amazing. They are each, of course, they each taste different. But the name of the company comes from Apothica, a mysterious place where wine was blended and stored in 13th century Europe. But it is really, really tasty. And you will notice this Apothic White has a nice straw color to it, like a golden straw color. And the color comes from the white wines that are blended. It's a mix of Riesling, Chardonnay, and Pinot Grigio. So Apothic White, check it out. Today's topic is writing your first chapter. Now, if you've been following me for any length of time, you know who I am, right? I'm a ghostwriter, editor, author. I write my own books as well as for other people, but I am also an author coach. So you can Google me, you can Amazon me. I am here for your reading and writing pleasure. Writing the first chapter is such a challenge for a lot of people because they're like, okay, I want to write this book, but I don't know where to begin. Where do I start? What do I say? How do I make it all come together? And it's like the meme with all of the arithmetic things floating around. Like, what is it? People think that's what book writing is. Let's be honest, it can be, but it doesn't have to be that hard. So the videos that I do for you are to help you kind of, calm yourself down, dumb down the process. And I say that in the most loving way, but to help my writer boos bring it on home, right? We're going to get your book from a thought in your head to a book in your hand. Writing the first chapter. 1, the first sentence. Now, some things that you will read or come across will say the first sentence has to hook the reader. The first sentence has to be momentous. The first sentence has to be Pulitzer Prize worthy. That's just not true. I mean, think about it. How often have you read a book and been hooked by the first sentence? Probably not very often. That's because it's not going to happen. The first sentence, yes, is an introductory. Yes, it should be well written, but it's not going to hook your reader. There is literally almost nothing you can say in the first sentence that will make somebody say, oh my gosh, I'm so in love with this book. It is a page turner. The first chapter is more where you want to put the meat. The first chapter is what you want to use to hook them. Some chapters can be short, 3-4 pages. Other chapters may be a little more lengthy, 20-30 pages. But that first chapter is where you should focus on hooking the reader, getting them to not put your book down, not the first sentence. It won't be momentous. It won't hook them, and it absolutely will not be Pulitzer Prize worthy. 2, figure out where to start. So people will say, Carla, I don't know where to start. At the beginning of the story, or talking about the main point, the topic of the chapter. If you're telling a story, just pick somewhere to start. For example, in Mask Off. Mask Off is a story about Sergeant Knight, who is embroiled in a love triangle, and at the same time, he's fighting social ills and a murder, right? So I'm not going to start with the day he was born. I'm not going to start with his grandfather introducing firefighting to their family, because Sergeant Knight is a 3rd generation firefighter. Nobody cares about all of that stuff. I just started at a good place to move forward. Now, some of that, like him being a third generation firefighter, I throw in not as a flashback, but where it's needed. I throw that information in. I kind of sprinkle it along the way to character build, but I'm not going to build all the way up to the story. Nobody has time to read about his whole life. We just want to get to the story. So that is where you start, especially if you're doing any kind of romance or novel, any kind of fiction work. Don't start all the way at the beginning. Now, if you're doing a memoir, that's a little bit different. Memoirs, people typically do start at the beginning, but in general book writing, just find a place to start and start. Think about, was it Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? It doesn't start talking about when Goldilocks was a babe in the manger. It talks about when the three bears left their house and she snuck into the house. 3, introduce your main character. Now, your main character is, and you may have more than one, but your main character is who you will use to convince your audience to invest their emotions. This creates the hunger that your reader has to continue. So if you go through your whole first chapter and we never meet the main character, then it's kind of like, or one of your main characters, oh, well, we don't need to hear all about their manager at work unless their manager is the main part of the story. We don't need to hear about their neighbors unless their neighbors are a main character. Make sure you introduce that main character in the first chapter to create some sort of reader investment. 4, snapshot of normal life. So we'll open this up. And what did I say? Chapter 1. London's eyes opened before the alarm clock on her phone had the chance to awaken her. She awoke with a strange intuition that something just wasn't right. She tapped the home button on her iPhone to check the time, then rolled her eyes. With time ticking down, she only had 13 minutes before the alarm sounded. 13! That was just enough time to be irritated, but not enough time to get more sleep. She lay there, relishing being enveloped by the sheets. So I talk about and of course it continues on. So I begin with a snapshot of her normal life. Who can't relate to an alarm going off in the morning and wanting more time? Who can't relate to wanting to stay in the warm, comfy, cozy sheets and get more sleep? That is a snapshot of her normal life. And obviously it keeps going, about 350 more pages, but you want to give your readers some sense of this is what life is like before this major event happens or before the problem arises. This is what life looks like, just so that they kind of feel like, okay, she's normal, she's not some crazy psycho person drinking blood out of victims' necks and chopping their arms off and storing them in the freezer. You want to give your audience something that they can relate to. 5, then you introduce your problem. So after London, after she wakes up, I go next paragraph. Per her usual routine, she prayed, thanking her Heavenly Father for waking her up, keeping her and her family safe through the night, and keeping them in perfect health, mentally and physically. She hopped out of bed and turned on the light to wake up her boys, when something out of the norm caught her eye. There was a condom. There was a used condom in the middle of the floor. So I've introduced the problem. Now, I'm still in chapter 1, obviously, only in paragraph 2, so I jumped to it really quickly, but I've showed a sense of normalcy, something that people can relate to, and I have introduced a problem, because you're like, well, how did a used condom get on the floor? And then you want to keep reading. 6, pump the brakes on your background. Now, you want to introduce backstory to the client, to their personality, why they are the way they are, why their family is where it is and how they act, why she has the job she has. You introduce those things as you go along. You don't introduce London and then just build a story around build a background around London. You don't introduce Sergeant Knight and just talk about his whole life's history and his family's history. We don't need all of that, and we don't need it right away. Chances are we probably won't get to most of it, but the parts that we do need, you can sprinkle them where they are relevant. Don't just bombard us with all of the details of your characters' lives. It's too much, it's overwhelming, and it's boring. Show, don't tell. So you don't just say that your characters are happily married. You show them being happily married. You show them like the husband walking past her in the kitchen and smacking her on the butt, or when she comes home, hey honey, I'm home, and she waltzes into the living room to give her husband a nice juicy kiss as he watches football on TV. You show a banter between them that the reader can understand, that they love each other, they care for each other, and they have fun together. You don't just say London has a husband and they love each other. That's boring. We want to be invested in them, and we want to read about their relationship. We want to read about the fun that they have together. That is how you show and don't tell. 8, we are going to invoke emotion. We need flaws. You can't just have a character be perfect. Everything about them looks perfect. Everything about their personality is perfect. We need you to pull emotion out of us, the reader, by showing us her flaws. Show us how she behaves. Show us Sergeant Knight's weakness. We want to see how your character is really trying to save the day, but they have this fallacy that just won't let them be great. There's something about them that we can just put our finger on, so you just drop a nugget and then take it away. Because remember, this is the first chapter, right? You don't want to give too much away, but just sprinkle a little bit of flaw in there, sprinkle a little bit of fallacy in their life, and then take it away so that the reader is more engaged and they want to keep reading. 8, keep writing. So the first chapter is going to be trash. I say that on almost all of my videos. When you first begin to write, you're just getting it on paper. The whole first draft may be trash, but as you continue to write, you'll get better and better and better. So if you stop after the first chapter and try to edit it and massage it, you're still kind of a crappy writer, and you're making edits and it's still kind of going to be crappy. So wait until you get to the end. Now, when you come back to revise that first chapter, not only are you massaging it from the lens of having watched the whole book play out, because it may deviate from your outline, but you are also editing as a more experienced writer, someone who's better at their craft. So keep writing beyond that first chapter and let the words just flow. Then 10, chill out. It's not going to be perfect, but it will come. If you keep writing, they will come. Same thing. Just chill out. Give yourself a little bit of grace and understand that, yes, this first chapter is a challenge, but you can get through it. I look forward to hearing from you, Writer Boos. Tell me which one of these tips resonates the most with you. Happy writing.